And for me, I've always kind of been of the belief that I trust myself. I love my imagination so much. I completely and utterly believe in it. And it's not that I always get it right. It's just that being in there feels really good. And as a child, I just used to sit, I can sit in a room just in heaven with nothing else other than just like, because my mind, because my mind was just making all this stuff happen. I'm sure many of you guys can relate to this, but one particular challenge is that, an overactive imagination in education is a difficult thing to handle and a difficult thing to be understood by those around you. And so, for me, it was always, Jacob, can you just do a bit less? Like, just play simple. You've got lots of good ideas, Jacob. Just one is enough. And, so I played drum kit in the concert band at school. And, on the part, it's like, and it's like, okay, well, and and all these musicians just trying to play along with their part, and it's like, stop, Aaron, stop. Okay, Jacob, less is more, and it's that interesting thing of less is more, because less is only more when you know what more is, and then you can make a conscious decision to step back from that, and. For me, I think it's kind of like what I was saying earlier on. It's about you have to let yourself come out to be able to see yourself as raw elements, raw materials, and then you can make some creative decisions about what to do. But if you're constantly pushed back in the shell, not in terms of like in a very negative way, like you're bad or wrong, but more just like there's too much that we can deal with right now. So go with that. Just wait till just right now. You just got to play that groove, So I think for me, as a teenager, I had trouble relating to the people around me that were telling me that things were correct and incorrect. And I think I've learned since that music, thank goodness, is not it's not biology, for example. It's not a matter of life and death. It's really just lovely. And the point of music is to explore what it means to be expressive. And so there is not really such a thing as this is correct and this is incorrect. And I've never paid too much attention to, this is the right note to put in the chord and this is the wrong note. But I think as I said, I've trusted my intuitions enough to gather a sense of, I feel this is strong and this is weak in terms of emotion. I'd maybe say that this voicing is not as strong as this voicing, because I don't necessarily want to double the third, as Bach would say. And I later learned that Bach said, don't double the third in principle. But, I think it's sort of going back to the original point. It's like, why do you do music? And why do you do anything? And for me, the reason I do music is because I want to chase those goosebump moments. The moments that just make me go like, oh man, what is that? What is that sound? And how do I understand it? How can I achieve that myself? And I looked around me as a teenager and nobody else was thinking in those terms, so I just took upon myself all the responsibilities of the band members, and gradually gathered things. But one problem I've had is that my technique, my hands, I've never ever been able to catch up with my head, to the point where when I went to jazz college as an 18-year-old for a couple of years, I was the kid in the class with no chops, but the ears. So I could hear everything that was going on. I knew the notes and the chords and why emotionally this one note was just so tender and stuff like that. But I couldn't just play over Donna Lee at 300 BPM. I couldn't do that. So, it was hard to explain why some things are valuable. It's hard to explain why certain things are valuable, some underneath details. And I'm sure you guys and Jamsi, I'm sure, and absolutely Jean can relate to this, because it's to do with when you create something, it's tuning into all the different levels of gestures, right? It's the general gestures of, it's this, and this is the beginning, and this is the end. Or it's loud and it's quiet, or it's bright and then it's dark. But there are many gestures in between that are to do with, it's bright and it's heading towards brightness, but I'm not going to make it bright until later. And like that suddenly it's added a dimension of intention that I just really enjoyed as a teenager. So having the patience to invest in those parts of your imagination is a challenge, because it's kind of fairly generally misunderstood and or dismissed. So I think there are always times in a person's life where you have to think, well, why am I doing this again? Why do I love this? And Why is it important to me? And you know, if for example my left brain takes over, which it often does, you know, I'm sure some of you guys can relate to this thinking about thinking conundrum, right? And you know that's a problem because it's what you described as sort of paralysis from analysis type situations where you're just tied up and you can't even see the wood for the trees anymore because you've lost perspective. And all of us as creative people can, I'm sure, relate to that thing when you tune so deeply into a part of a process that there's just no seeing it for what it is anymore. And that takes the courage to step away or get somebody else's opinion and not be defensive and all sorts of things. But, you know, I think it's coming back to a place that belongs to you, a place in your mind that belongs to you and where your values are safe from others' judgment. And you know, I could speak for a long time about this. One other thing I might quickly mention is that just touring was exhausting at first for me because I'm certainly an introvert. So, you know, concentrating all these little details, they kept me alive. And touring, you know, funnily enough, no one really minds if it's like, or it just doesn't make much of a difference because everyone just wants to go, you know. So at first it was like, oh, do you guys even care? You know, and then it's like, oh, now I understand that actually, you know, with communication, the gestures have grown. The importance of putting the foreground in the foreground has grown. And for me, when I create things, I'm sure you guys would relate a little bit to this as well. It's like the background is in the foreground. You know, the underneaths are in the foreground because they're under the microscope. But when you perform, that is the foreground. You are the foreground. And I had to realize that it's the same energy that goes inwards, that goes outwards when one performs, but you just need to polarize the direction of that energy, and then you're fine. And I didn't need to build a sort of Jacob the champion who does touring and excites people thing. It was just like, I just need to be myself, but in a different direction. And so it's just like falling off a log, you know, you just sort of think, well, I'm going to be me today, and I don't really mind even if you like it very much, but it's just nice to see you.